What did Putin want to show the world by attacking Ukraine with Oreshnik, and will Trump start a new war or maybe few wars? These and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Iryna Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channels Rashkin Report in English, Rashkin News and others. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Yuri, and it's always great to see you. And thanks to our listeners and viewers who are paying attention. Hit like, subscribe, follow me on Substack, all that good stuff, and let's get to it.
As Trump likes add to his posts, thank you for your attention. So we thanks to all our viewers really for your attention and and other things that you are with us today and with our other interviews. Putin has once again given Trump and the whole world and all peace initiatives the middle finger. As we saw, Putin attacked Ukraine in freezing temperatures with hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles, and even launched his infamous Oreshnik missile, which was empty, but it was at Lviv. It's clear how much they respect the US. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy linked Russia's attack to Trump's peace plan. So, Yuri, what should and will be the world's reactions, Trump's in particular reaction, to this expensive but essentially cheap terror and Putin's provocations?
I think it's important to acknowledge what we're seeing, and that is that our world has shifted from the world of rules and order to a world of signals, where signals are being sent, and then we have to figure out what that signal means. We might be correct, we might be incorrect. That signal might have been meant for us. We may be collateral damage to this signal. But that's kind of the world we live in, because diplomacy doesn't really matter like it, I guess, used to. The boundaries and borders don't matter so much as sending a signal does. Because when Trump arrests Nicolas Maduro, that sends a signal. And so when Putin attacks Ukraine with Oreshnik, that sends a signal. And always the question is it the signal? You know, it's like a work of art. Once it's out of your hands, everybody else decides what it means. And when it comes to Oreshnik and the Putin's attacks, the question is he trying to scare Europe? Is he trying to send a message to NATO? Or is he trying to send a message to Ukrainians saying that you're on your own? The United States is busy with its own things. It's decided to exchange its role of world leader, world policeman, world anything for being a original bully. And that means that no one's going to come and help and save you, Ukraine. And Europe is scared itself, and so they're sitting over there and they're not coming and save you. And I think that it is a threat that is an empty threat for a couple of reasons. One, Ukraine can't surrender. Two, Putin is showing his weakness when he is trying to terrify people. Terror is the weapon of those who don't have the strength for real action. And so this is where you have terror and trying to scare people and trying to scare countries into what Putin might be able to do. If Putin could, he would have already. This is where we see a difference between Trump and Putin. They're both using the same methods, but Trump works because Trump is benefiting from the great efficiency of a great, powerful American state power. And that's something that Putin just doesn't have. This is where his desire to take over Ukraine in 3 or 4 days have failed many times. Kind of like how many, well, not quite as many times, actually more than Trump's promise to end the war in 24 hours. You know, when you have these expectations of such quick solutions and so much time passes by, how do you even measure how many times somebody failed at trying to accomplish their goal? I think that the signal here is that Putin is brutal. And it's important to understand that in the United States, we now have people in power who respect brutality, who value it. even humor that is now becoming more popular in America is humor. The idea that you can laugh at somebody else's expense. That idea of being mean to people is selling well in the Trump camp. So if Putin is going to show he's brutal, then I think Ukraine has to show that it has more brutality when it comes to destroying Russian oil refineries or using drones. I think that this, in a way, Putin can say whatever he wants, that this is payback for attack on his residence, which could have been just, some builder trying to hide the fact that everything was stolen, and therefore, let's blame Ukrainians. But in this instance, I think Ukraine has plenty to pay back for. And this and other, in the really 4 years, almost 4 years of the big war, and 10 years of just since the Crimea annexation. And again, we can blame Barack Obama, we can blame Democrats, we can blame America, we can blame whoever we want to blame, whoever our heart desires. But in the end, we are here where we are, and it is now up to all of us to save the situation where we're located. And we all have our region of the front that we have to take care of. And in the United States, we have a very difficult administration, but Ukraine's challenges have been greater. And everybody's sending signals. Trump is sending signals. Putin is getting signals, sending signals. But I think some of those signals are desirable and on purpose, and some are not on purpose. And the ones that are on purpose, we can all see. This thing blows up. Woohoo! It's terrible. It really is horrible. And if I was in Kiev at the time, I would not be able to make light of this. I think it is only sitting here in the United States and looking at the whole big situation and saying, to Putin, you've been trying to do this in 3 or 4 days, and now you are faking nuclear attack because this is the level that you have gotten down to. It looks pathetic on if you're trying to win a war. If you're trying to terrify defenseless people, then I guess that's what terror is all about. So I think it's the signal that Putin doesn't want to send is how weak it makes him look, and how dangerous it makes. I guess danger would be okay with him. So let's just settle on the weak part.
But Trump, a lot of our experts tell me these days that Trump returned as a big, powerful world policeman when he kidnapped Maduro, and these all events near Venezuela's oil refineries and Russian tankers so of this fleet, and we see such a side of this case. But we see that the Trump's plan has only just begun, that now he plans to take over Mexico and Cuba and maybe other countries.
But not Russia,
But not Russia, yes.
Russia. I think it's important to acknowledge that when we speak of world policemen doesn't kidnap. World policeman arrests and, executes order on arrest. And in this situation, in this case, we see that when you choose word kidnapping, it now can be viewed with a partisan lens, because if that statement makes one suspect of the liberal leanings, because of course, Donald Trump liberated Venezuela from a terrible dictator, and if you don't see it, again, this is part of the brutality. Can we be brutal? And can we get away without paying high cost? This is the really amazing thing about this administration and this whole mindset of Trumpism, where they're okay with violence, they're okay with domination, they just don't want to pay the price. They just don't want any consequences. And I think being a policeman, there's certain obligations that come with that. And we're not willing to follow any and take upon ourselves any obligations, because now we have a Don Roe doctrine. Now, I had a video out on my channel a few weeks ago, I believe, if not months, they're speaking about this new Don Road doctrine. But I guess, good ideas or, ideas that seem almost comical to me seem like a right thing to do for our president. So now we have a Don Road doctrine, which refers to poor President Monroe, who, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about him other than this doctrine that made him big to Trump. And the idea is that now we're going to be supposedly in charge of the Western Hemisphere, which is really a different way of looking at Monroe Doctrine than before, because really it's not about Western Hemisphere. It's about grabbing things that we can grab. It's about following the rules that we want to follow. It's about doing whatever we can get away with. And if we can get away with, like you can say that this is a little bit more honest, because in the past, the United States was had a long history of changing governments in Latin America, and we were speaking of democracy and those kinds of things. Well, now we're just being more honest, right? Isn't this great? Because now we have just a president who says it's about oil, that's what it's about. And I think policemen don't act this way. This is more of a kind of a gangster, maybe a mafia, kind of like a mafia state situation. And to a Russian ear, it's very familiar. And in fact, when Americans complain or don't see something, the Russian, in me goes, ha ha ha, this has been done before. But the American in me goes, wait a minute, if I'm not happy with this politician, I'm going to get this politician out. And I'm going to go with the other politician. I don't care who the other politician is. If necessary, I'll go, they'll tell me horrible things about it, but I have choices. Do we have choices if we have a mafia state that acts this way on like outside of our country? And inside of our country, we have a terrible murder of Renee Good in Minneapolis that took place in the last couple of days. And that really highlights something that I've been saying for a while here. When we speak about security guarantees from the United States, hello, we in the United States can't get security guarantees from the United States. So I think that the conversation about guarantees, security guarantees, is not about what the United States is willing to do or not. Although apparently for a new novel reason that we're just not going to fight with Russia because Russia will never attack Ukraine again. It's crazy. But I think that this president is acting not necessarily as a hooligan or is maybe a gangster, but when it comes to what he does on high seas, he's acting like a pirate, because we are stopping tankers, we're boarding ships, we are cutting off oxygen basically for Venezuela, because this is like Pirates of Caribbean. What is going on here? And then the question is, where's the nursing staff? Where's the police? Where's the government? And it's the same people, because we have a person who is the main patient and a head main doctor in this hospital all at the same time. So I think that we're just going to expect to see this more, and especially if Trump is going to be rewarded for this by having conversations with Putin, then you can count on Trump trying to catch a tanker every day.
But Donald Trump explains his steps and behavior that he's fighting with drugs, cares about US national security, and so these targets are behind him.
He does say that, and I think this is important to remember, that when he does one thing that he likes, he's not opposed to saying something else, although it's been very revealing and almost fun to watch him openly admit that it's all about oil. So, when other people would say, although I'm glad to see that they are now releasing actually political prisoners, so I can kind of update this thing that I've been saying for a while, which is they asked him on the plane if he talked about political prisoners, and he's like, no, oil first. So Venezuela actually is releasing political prisoners, or so reports are. So maybe that's a really good thing. But this started as a drug war. This is, it's important to understand that we can feel like Trump is being sporadic, impulsive, occidental, but there seems to be a plan which also combines with like a TV reality that he lives in. So it almost seems like when it comes to Venezuela, this has been, dare I say, it really looks like it from here, Marco Rubio adventure. And so we have a president who acts like he always does, being sporadic, being wild, weird, attracting attention everywhere he looks and does with everything. We own Venezuela, we don't own Venezuela, whatever. But then there's Marco Rubio, who is actually looking at this and says, we sold this idea to Trump as oil, but reality is this is the first domino that is going to fall, because first is going to be Venezuela, that finances Cuba helps Nicaragua, and so one after the other, we're going to be really effective here in regime change in Latin America, and Trump is going to think it's all about oil. And so it is kind of confusing and clear at the same time. But it is just, I want to reemphasize that this administration is never above using something as an excuse that sounds good, when in reality it has nothing to do with their objectives. Similarly, how they're approaching the whole peace process between Russia and Ukraine, where they seem to have, you can say sanctions against India, or sanctions against these different states, or blame because they're not helping Ukraine, or they're paying for the war, or whatever. But it's all really just trying to buttress his main points, that he wants to be friends with Putin, or he wants Venezuela's oil, because being friends with Putin, having access to Russian contracts, money, and all of that good stuff. So follow the money. It's not like money rules everything, but when it comes to Donald Trump, it really seems to explain a lot.
There is a version among our political strategists, for example, Michael Shettelman, that in the event of a successful war with Cuba, Trump will gain the support of the Americans, almost all Americans, the electorate for all subsequent elections, not only to Congress, because this historical confrontation is actually, can it be right? Explanation of events.
I think that regionally there will be a lot of excitement. Now, we're not talking about a war with Cuba. I think right now we're hoping, well, who knows? I mean, it could all change. But it seems like they're hoping that it's going to, by ending Venezuela's support for Cuba, regime there is going to collapse. But I think that ultimately Cuba concerns people who are concerned about democracy, which are Democrats, or people who have connection to Cuba. And those people live in states that already, in Florida, which already supports Trump. So whether Venezuela or Cuba get rid of their dictators doesn't really change things in the United States, especially if we don't see this resulting in democratic changes. If this is changing one regime for another, then I don't think even those that escape those regimes and live in Florida are going to be particularly thrilled about that outcome. People want democracy. People want change. And they want freedom in Latin America, in Cuba, in Venezuela, and the way Trump goes about it is not really accomplishing it. So I think that the impact of that is going to be, positive impact of that is going to be regional at best. And I think that negative impact of whether, or just already what we're seeing with Venezuela, is very clear, because again, Americans in general don't want territory expansion. This has been something that we've been making fun of Russia for a while, that they're so concerned about this territory expansion bit when we live here in 21st century. But all of a sudden we have a president who is interested in territorial expansion like nobody in decades and decades, and really doesn't respond to concerns of the voters who want prices to go down, because life is expensive in part because of Trump's policies. But ultimately, he's the president, so he's responsible. But he wants to explain to people that prices are going to come down because of regime change in Venezuela, because oil from Venezuela is going to show up tomorrow at our gas station, and our prices are going to magically drop, and everything is going to be great. Vote Trump. This doesn't make any sense. But if you look at it from the point of view of regime change that Marco Rubio is pushing through, then there's kind of a point to it. And And I think this is the unfortunate part is this is not even leveling with the American people, and it's also scaring our allies because when we did what we're doing with Venezuela, there was a reasonable amount. Well, I mean, there was already this is violating for world policeman once again doesn't act this way. But when Trump started making statements about Greenland, well, we see that this is where even Republicans are starting to rebel, revolt, mutiny, all those beautiful words that makes me think of January 6th. That Republicans themselves are staging an uprising because they don't want another country to support. They don't want to lose allies over Greenland. None of this sounds like really even traditional Republicans anymore. And MAGA is confused because on one hand they want to follow Trump off a cliff, but on the other hand this really looks cliffy, and so they are concerned. So for Trump to say that this is a good political move, at best regionally, but I think negatives are going to far outweigh the positives, and this is going to be a burden that he's trying to settle us with for years, and we still have in our mouth the taste of sand from Iraq, because we were told that this is going to be 3-day cakewalk, 10 days, and it's going to be paid for with Iraqi oil. Boy, doesn't that just sound familiar?
So can we agree that Donald Trump is destroying NATO because there are already alarm bells from France, for example, that because of Trump's behavior, they can really look on the scenario to withdraw from NATO?
I think American voters destroyed NATO when we voted for Donald Trump. Enough? I mean, is that clear enough? Do I have to call in the President Macron and tell him that we are done with this? Because when we chose Donald Trump, who has been known from at least for a while from John Bolton that Donald Trump wanted to leave NATO during his first cadence, this is not a surprise. So if this is a surprise to French people, now this is it's a bad situation. It is a bad situation. We keep discussing news that aren't particularly good. And I think one reason to smile is to how absurd it all is, because United States looking at having a conflict, military conflict with a NATO ally over a bunch of ice. Okay, fine. Maybe there's some precious rare earth minerals and maybe whatever else they can find under ice or just whatever else. They build a big Trump castle on top of it. But it is a reality. This is American president for whom this is not the only weird thing he's done today. And if Europe is going to pretend to play these games of oh my goodness, what is going on? This is what's going on. We have a woman who was killed while turning her car around in Minneapolis. U.S. citizen, a white 37-year-old woman who should be. This is spreading fear. This is not spreading trust and safety. So I think that if French people feel like NATO, again, the security guarantees in this world that we are finding ourselves in, this are not going to come from. If you always did what you're always done, you're always going to get what you're always got. So the past kind of tells us about the future. Donald Trump has 80-year pattern practically of behaving a certain way. So that means the answer for Europe has to be something different. And what I see as something different so they don't get what they're going to get with Donald Trump is Ukraine. I think that the answer for Europe and for Ukraine is becoming more and more that this is a very important marriage, maybe a marriage of convenience, but they're neighbors. And neighbors in this situation can either fight each other or they can help each other, because Putin is showing that he is not interested in stopping. And I think that he is showing that he can deal with Donald Trump. He can handle Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has shown that he can be handled by Putin. Donald Trump can grab anybody, but apparently Putin can grab Donald Trump. And these things, we just see them over and over. And I think that the need for NATO has not gone anywhere. The need for defense union against alliance against Russia is now more prescient than ever. But it needs to consist of states that are willing to put up or shut up. And it's not the United States. States, which is willing to kind of support from around the corner with a cup of coffee in hand and like just kind of like looking at this whole thing and going, maybe not. Maybe we'll just make a deal with Putin afterwards and it's all going to be great. But reality is that there's only one army in Europe that is ready to fight, that is fighting right now, and it's Ukrainian army. And Donald Trump is showing that he's willing to fly through and show dominance and aggression, and then you still have to bow to him when you see him, but he's not going to come to your rescue unless, I don't know if he's going to come to Vladimir Putin's rescue. Well, I guess he has been for the last year. So yes, he'll come to Putin's rescue, but it also seems like he's almost fulfilling an obligation where the 2025 ended and we had this whole thing about attack on Putin's residence, which really wasn't an attack, and even Trump acknowledged as much. And now he turned the page. Now he's on to Venezuela and Greenland. And so what Ukraine, huh? Who is talking about it? And it's terrible because it opens up an opportunity for Putin to do what he is doing and try to intimidate and terrify Ukrainians into surrender, into capitulation by pointing at this very obvious behavior by Donald Trump and saying, he's not going to be there to save you. It's kind of confusing for me to hear many people in Ukraine who are still hoping for Donald Trump to come through. And it seems like maybe it's a sign of desperation because situation seems so bleak sometimes that only American cavalry, but that's in the movies. In reality, we have Russia that has way overextended itself. We have Ukraine that is battling this monster for already 10 years. And Europe that is coming to a more clear realization, as we see with them investing money into Ukraine and Ukraine's defense, that future defense of Europe rests with the armed forces of Ukraine.
Yuri, thank you very much. Thank you for this conversation and for your thoughts, for your position. See you next week. Take care.
Take care.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report in English and Rashkin News. Please subscribe to Yuri's YouTube channels, to Substack Yuri Rashkin, and to our YouTube War and Politics 24. Leave your comments. Thank you very much. My name is Iryna Uzlova. See you later. Take care.